All right, it is 9 o'clock, and for some reason I must have hit the button saying 9:10. I don't know why. But for those, well, actually nobody's watching, but hopefully for those who will be catching us on the replay, we appreciate you guys coming in. Um, we can actually stop. We got some people in the room,
Excellent.
and it is Monday. It is what we like to call the figure reaction. This is a form of discussion. This is not necessarily, there is no right, there is no wrong. This is honestly just collectors talking for collectors. That being said, the one thing I always love to go is to find my button. And where the heck is my footage?
Bring it up, bring it, bring it, bring it, bring it up.
All right.
I'm sorry. I'm just so proud of that intro.
Really nice.
Welcome, everybody, and we appreciate everybody watching. Of course, I'm True Star Screamer, Dave Lutwack. With me, we've got Mike from Junkions Crafts and Builds, and we have our special guest, Niles French from the Transformers ERC group. I'm not sure which of these gentlemen specifically brought it up. Was it you, Niles, who came up with this
It's
topic?
all about Niles.
All right. We are
All
talking
about me.
about.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure.
Well, actually, first of all, before we jump into things, guys, please introduce yourselves.
Oh,
Start with
well,
you, Mike.
let's let our guest start first.
All right, Niles. Who are
Good
you?
evening, everyone. I'm Niles French, and I'm from Staten Island, New York. And I've been friends with a lot of the folks from the ERC group for the last few years. I mainly collect Transformer Masterpiece. I have almost dipped my toe into a couple of the Super 7 Thundercats and NECA Turtles, but as of right now, I'm just going to stick with Transformers. And it's pertinent for our conversation today because every time I think I'm done collecting, something else comes out, another figure comes out, another release comes out, and that's just what keeps me going for Transformers. So as of the foreseeable future, I'm definitely just going to be in for Masterpiece for Transformers.
Okay.
All right, here. And of course, for those of you friends who are familiar with the show, we've got Mike from Junkions Crafts and Builds, and of course me, True Star Screamer, who Mike does probably the best GI Joe reviews on the internet right now. I don't care what you say. If you're looking for a Class 5 figure, check this guy out.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's just, yeah, I don't even bother to go to his page. But we are here to talk about being the definitive collector. That's probably one thing we all have in common is striving. We all want stuff, and we want the best. Now, there are people who like to collect just various things, whether it be like all the Optimus Primes. You got your regular G1 Prime, for example. Then you get your Nemesis variety, your Great Flavor, you got your Magnus variety and such. So there's people who just like to blanketly do that. Then you've got those who try to go for the best. This is my collection. I like to say there's various phases of being a collector. The got to catch them all, then trying to whittling it down to it. I myself personally have been kind of phasing out of the Transformers aspect of things. I still buy them, but it's not the primary part of my collection. Just to give an idea of like what do I work with, I'm just gonna pick the camera real quick and just push it over, just show my Marvel Legends section, and you'll see the Spider-Mans are all up in that one corner, and the Iron Mans are just those two top shelves.
Wow.
That's all one character. I collect Mortal Kombats. I've got Storm right behind me. I've got McFarlane over there. And this is a very good topic because I'm right now at the part of, I don't say collection purge, but I'm kind of also like what I want to put my monies into. the first 2 episodes of this was, the combination of the price hikes from Hasbro, then we also talking about, definitive figures. Then our second episode was with Matt. We were talking about companies like 5K Toys with some of the more unusual things on there. But we have a nostalgia for a character. Or for a franchise. And I think most of us here are definitely at I want the best of what I can get. So we are looking for that definitive figure, and definitive is this. And that expression is used a lot. This is the definitive Prime. This is the definitive Megatron. Well, what is definitive? It is the final one. It is not to be changed. Considered the best of its kind and impossible to improve. And, well, you guys saw the Spider-Man figures. I'm not going to go to all the Spider-Mans. I'm actually going to use for now for me, and I'm going to get some examples from these guys in a second. Venom. This is a really easy one to do if you've been paying attention to the Marvel Legends line. They had a Venom figure from the Venom wave. They had their big Venom, but then they had like the normal 6-inch version. Then they just came out with a version of Venom using the movie Venom body that had the wings. And then they just came out with the third Venom, not even a month, like less than 6 weeks later, using the Omega Red body, which, in my opinion, yes, is the definitive Venom, but they just hammered those 3 out so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And as a collector, I ended up buying them all. Mike, we'll go to you, and then Niles for you. I guess in your collecting history, what would you say is a figure that you want to say you bought maybe too many of, just trying to hunt for that right one?
Well, I really started getting back into collecting, and it was with Transformers during the pandemic, and catching up with a lot of the stuff I missed over the years. So I think for me, like some of my favorites that I was always looking for and grabbing a couple of different versions of was definitely the Carbots. Prowl's one of my favorite characters. And so like I found one of the old retail ones. I had the third party, or not third party, excuse me, the Takara Tomy version. And as you keep going along with these guys, it is that continual search for the right character. And I don't know if I found that yet. Yeah, it's just trying to find that definitive version. It's a balance, and I think that's what you showed on one of your slides. There was balancing what you want to do with your collection, and that's going to help you define what you put in your collection. For me, I like a lot of articulation and moving parts around, actually having it more like a toy. So sometimes my definitive version might not be the one that's coated in paint or has nothing but plastic. It's trying to find that right one, and sometimes you do find it pretty quickly. Other times it's something that, as I think we've all just said, it's iterations upon iterations that you'll see that you just kind of continually go after. So.
And what about you, Niles? What would you say is your idea of a definitive figure? And what would you say is a figure that you possibly might have been chasing this time?
So for me, it was definitely the Decepticon Seekers for sure. Main thing that I look for, as if I had to say what a definitive character or interpretation of it is something that you can see the evolution of. And from the original Takara Seekers to the Make toys, I remember going crazy trying to get all 3 Seekers. And then when I finally got them from Make Toys, I was like, that's it. My collection is done. It's complete. And then I remember the Starscream head was released with MP44, the Optimus Prime. And there was rumblings that there was going to be a new Seeker mold. And the head alone, looked so much better, in my opinion, than the Make toys. And then Deformation Space came out, the third-party company releasing their Seekers. And to me, that was the definitive version. But my measuring stick for that looking in retrospect, was definitely seeing an evolution of the figure, more articulation, less boxy looking, a little bit more sleek, a little bit obviously more to the Toon realm. We have to talk about that when we're mentioning Transformers. But for me, that's definitely one figure where I didn't keep those Seekers. I usually replaced them. There are very few figures that I have bought and then I keep them. So what I do is that I end up replacing them on my shelf space. So definitely the Decepticon Seekers were first and foremost for that.
Okay. Yeah. Seeking the Seekers. Actually, that probably would have been a good card to use now that I think about it. Actually, I really like that. And that's and actually, in a way, you kind of just went with my quality versus quantity. Sounds like you're the type of person who you find what you want. When it gets done, you just have you would just have one Starscream on display. You don't have all your Starscreams
right.
on display.
Correct. Yeah. Unless I really, really, really like the character, very few I have doubles of, but absolutely, I will go over the quantity over quantity, definitely for sure.
I mean, and a lot of the domestic collectors, that's kind of, that's, I want to say, is probably their big thing, is chasing that dragon of that perfect figure. And the reason I purposely put Hasbro versus Mafex, a Mafex figure, that's about, especially these days, they go anywhere from about $95 to over $100. But if you look at, say, the Mafex Wolverine versus the evolution of the Marvel Legend Wolverine, for example, yes, it's light years apart. I'm looking at my shelf over there, and I'm looking at right now about 4 Wolverines, which one was $15, one was $20, one was $25, the other one was in a 2-pack. I bought 4 Wolverines seeking that one, or I could have just dumped all that money into the Mafex and be like, boom, perfect. But also, though, in display, that quantity is also can be a display. Mike, do you have anything, any character that you might have multiples of? We know we have somebody who's got a prime shelf example.
Yeah. As Niles was saying before, I have a complete set of the original 3 for the Takara Tomy Seekers, and then I also have the Deformation Space Seekers. I wanted to have them because at one point I was going to have the one set in alt mode, another set in bot mode. Another example is with say Action Force. They have figures that are basically built as army builders. So you grab multiple ones of those because you want to have that volume. So that comes together with having for this quality and quantity.
And again, like I said, for me, and you have that. There is for collections having that display.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the big things though is when you're seeking that definitive one is the fact that the reality is there'll always be a new version out. Again, Hasbro being the top toy company, Transformers. I've already mentioned. We've had how many versions of Prime? MP. We had, or I could put Hasbro / Takara. We had the first MP01, which was actually I still have somewhere. The first, then you had MP10, then we got MP4, or we've had now 2 versions of Seekers from them. Marvel Legends. I mentioned the Venom just as an example. Spider-Man. Oh dear God, how many have they had with those? With the Lightning Collection, I mentioned that one because that is just now starting to do a 2.0 of those, and believe it or not. And that actually kind of annoyed me because they started doing a 2.0 of the original team before they even completed a lot of their teams. Mattel, it's the big machine with them, at least for us. I'd say probably the collectors that are WWE figures that are top ones. He-Man right now, I think they're only on what wave? It's still relatively new, this new version of He-Man. But actually, He-Man, though, has had various incarnations from the 4 Horsemen, Matty Collector, so I could use that. McFarlane, Batman.
Mm-hmm.
That's the joke. Oh, this is the next best Batman. No, this is the next best Batman. And then like we were talking about the third party, you know, you're mentioning with the deformation. Then all of a sudden, are you know, the question is, are you happy with your deformation, or is the next new make toys? I mean, Vans Toys still hasn't done their Seekers yet, guys.
Oh, they have.
No, but it's funny you brought up deformation space, and it's something we recently talked about. Was just this last month, Vans Toys released their version of Blaster.
Yeah.
A year before, we've had the deformation space. Now, you saw a lot of discussion in the community that kind of helped define this topic for tonight. Was what's the definitive version? A lot of people found the sculpt for the Vans Toys version a little off-putting, even though it's tune accurate. They found that the deformation space sculpt and such was a lot more appealing to them, even though they also are the same ones would say, well, I got to have this paint, I got to have the die cast. I have the deformation space Blaster now, as I think you went with Vans Toys, correct?
Actually, no, I didn't go in on the Vans Toys. I stayed with the deformation space, actually.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, I almost pulled the trigger on it, right? It had the toy head, which didn't come with the deformation space. So it's little things like that, you know, have me teetering on it, but it wasn't much of a change for me. I mean, yes, the Vans Toys, the paint on it looks a lot better, but to your point, Mike, I mean, there was a ton of conversation around it. You know, it was up for grabs. It wasn't to the point, David, of your original slide. It wasn't definitive enough for me to switch, right? So
And
I think
that's important.
Yeah, very important. I think competition is good. I don't necessarily, you know, think, because especially with third party, I think the numbers are low enough and the fans of all these various companies are numerous, still niche, but numerous enough for everyone to succeed. I think having choice is a great thing. You know, I mean, I would like to see some other figures done, but at the same time, hey, it's the third or fourth figure that Vans Toys has released this year, right? So that's always a positive thing to see.
And one of the big things, I mean, and we all have our different definition of what definitive is, ironically. Like Mike mentioned before, something that's well painted. A lot of people go to the Vans Toys. I am personally not a Vans Toys fan because with that paint, I can't mess with it. One of the ones I like to bring up is Bruticus. I actually had the Warbitron way back when. Then you had the Toys one. Then, I mean, for me personally, I love the Mastermind Creations one. For me, I find that as the definitive one because it's also a perfect transformation. It's a complete transformation. The hands are in and everything. While other people, they look at Zeta as their definitive one. I mean, I personally am not a fan of Zeta because with all their parts forming, like I look at their Superion and just the chest is its own thing. Again, this is for me. While it looks gorgeous, I don't find that as a definitive transformer. Now it might be a definitive display. And then,
It's funny you mentioned that because, go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I think it's really funny that you bring that up because I think one of the interesting things that separates transforming collecting from some of the other genres is, you know, the different modes that you have, but also combining as well too. You know, I'll shout out Jason Marshall from our ERC group. I bought all the MMC Combaticons from him, but I'm keeping them in bot mode, right? And also our friend Dr. Diecast, Sanjay, is constantly looking out for me for a Zeta metallic painted version because that's the one that I want, not for bot mode, but for combined mode, right? So those are like, for me, the MMC combined scale, for those that don't know, it's a little bit smaller, whereas Zeta and kind of set the scale for that height. So for me, you know, I have a Superion, to your point, David, and I'm now looking for the Zeta Combaticons for Bruticus as well too. So, it's funny that I guess there's a lot of considerations when you think about what goes into how you display, what size, what scale. Those are a lot of contributing factors that sometimes maybe other genres don't have as much.
So to go with that, oh, I was going to say, so to go with that, Niles, do you find a lot of the community influence or conversations about things like scale, third party versus official? Do you find that has changed your idea of what your definitive collection goes and leans toward?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I wasn't in for the MMC combatant cons at all, but after looking at them and seeing the different displays of friends like you and other people in the various groups and communities, it definitely gives you a different perspective on what you want to collect. And sometimes it's okay to have different sort of scale, so to speak, or even if something's more toy accurate or outside of the box, that might be a complete interpretation. I didn't necessarily go in on the Predacons, but the Predacons is a perfect example of how that's a complete different point of departure than it's not Toon, it's not toy, it's maybe not even Studio Ox, it's its own interpretation, right? So
are you talking about the Kang or the MMC one?
The Kang, yes.
The Kang one. Well, yeah, that's
I mean, that's completely different, so I definitely think that reviewers like yourself and T-Man and TM Reviews and Peg for Life, everyone has these different takes, and when you review them and you're able to watch these videos, you get a lot of different perspectives. So absolutely, the community has influenced me in a good way in that respect.
And well, I also mentioned, for me, like I do toy photography. So when I look at a figure, what makes a definitive figure for me? How photogenic is it? How posable is it? What can I do with it? I also mentioned on here the last one, high-end versions of figures. 3-0, a non-transforming transformer, but it's a beautiful display piece. Mezco. Now we're talking with Mezco, Mafex, and Figuarts. Like those, for example, they actually are slightly smaller than your typical 6-inch scale. I didn't mention on here NECA or McFarlane or even Marvel Select because they're a 7-inch scale. But for me, for example, I just reviewed it I think last month, Marvel Select Apocalypse. If you are a Marvel fan, that for me, as of right now, and I have to build the figures and such from Hasbro. I don't have the Toy Biz one, but I have those. But I find like the Marvel Select is my definitive Apocalypse because it does everything I want it to do, this type of thing. And there are those schools of camps, like when you're talking about that Zeta scale, and it's kind of, I mean, when they, when the Toy World crew came up with their Devastator, and then came out the Bruticus and then the Superior, they broke the game.
Absolutely, yeah.
They kind of set a whole new standard. But then DX9 had their stuff, for their Stunticons. But these are, it almost feels like, to get your definitive one, you also have to, it has to be definitive also to yourself, to your own wantings.
So also to that, maybe before we jump into this, because I know Michael does a lot of customization, and David, you mentioned Build-A-Figure. So even the way and non-transforming Transformers, do you have a particular type of figure that you like to collect? Like, do you like something that's more customizable, especially because you do photography like that, or do you get more enjoyment out of building something? Or Michael, you building a diorama around it or anything like that? Like, are those sort of things that affect the way that you collect? And what's the most, I guess, flexible for your particular tastes?
I'll let Dave start off with that.
The diorama thing, well, that actually, that's actually a fun one, because I actually have, like, I built street dioramas, and yes, I have kind of done that So yes, that sometimes that might help for the experience of it all. A great now, I personally don't feel like I don't want to buy a figure to customize it. I actually don't want to, because in general, I always like to say if I'm spending money on a figure, I want it to be perfect. A great example of that. Oh, like this is the McFarlane Nightfall Batman.
Mhm.
I'm not saying do it now, but if you look, I mean, if you look at the pictures, it looks nothing like this.
Mm.
I completely repainted this figure. Like, if you ever look this one up online, it's got lighter gray legs. Or, oh, it's over there, but probably my top video right now is the Marvel Select Blade, which I absolutely, utterly enjoy. I actually had to Dremel out its arms to give it more flexibility. I don't buy something to alter it. I mean, yes, I do get a little bit of joy knowing that I improved it, but at the same time, that doesn't. I want it out of the box to be definitive. I don't want to be the one to have to make it definitive because I want it accessible for everyone.
And that's a good point that you made there, Dave. Even though I've seen the results of your work, and I do think you do a masterful job in enhancing the figures that you have. I saw the pictures from your most recent Spawn figure that you purchased, and I think to go with your question now is about what do you find to with your collection that you can use to customize or change things around. I haven't found a lot of that with pardon me, with the Transformers collection part, even though we do have a lot of fantastic people, including Jason, that you mentioned earlier, that can take a figure and totally create an entirely new character out of that. And that's really one of the cool things that you see within the community. Another thing with the action figure line is just a lot of these companies now, their figures are mostly designed the same way, so you can do a little more plug and play with them. You'll see a lot of times where people will create with toy photography or diorama work that they will swap different brands around to create this tale of fantasy or anything else to go with what they want. I think that's what I still like about it. And maybe that's not a definitive aspect of collecting or a brand itself or a line, but I think that's what enhances a collector's joy, because after a while you can get things can get stagnant. And I think either maybe trying something new or having, like you said before, a variety of brands that you can kind of mix and match your display brings that spark of creativity back into your collection, other than just sitting there and having them stuck in an A stance.
So yeah, I mean, again, I think we sometimes have to make our own, but in the end, I think the goal is to buy that perfect one, and that's going to kind of segue into two things: one to the next point, and something from Brian Swanson mentioned. So, how do we decide what is the best figure? I mean, I personally think that a lot of it is a matter of choice. As the saying goes, if you're happy, you win. If you bought something and it's out of the box and oh my gosh, this is awesome, dude, I will never take that away from you. I want you to be thrilled. If you find that the McFarlane Movie Maniacs Crow figure was the best Crow figure ever made, which is just a static pose, but that's the pose that you wanted, congratulations. That type of thing. So do we decide what's the best? How do we decide what's the best? And then what Brian brings up here, I'm going to pull it up. I'm sorry, I'm going to cover you over, Niles, for a second.
No problem.
Do we buy placeholders? We know what's coming out is not going to be the best. And do you just want to have some representation, or do you want to hold out until we know the Fans Toys is out? We know it's coming. It's not here yet. We mentioned the Seekers, that the Fans Toys hasn't made theirs yet.
Yeah, well, for me, I guess I'm old fashioned, so I'll hold out. But for instance, Cliff Jumper was a perfect example for me. So it was Ace, MMC, X Transbots, a lot of different iterations as well. And when I saw the reveal for Parkour, the Fans Toys Cliff Jumper version, I was very excited. That was one that I knew that I had to wait. And I love Fans Toys, but I wouldn't say that they're my favorite or I'm a fanboy over them. But for me, getting back to your point of what is the definitive version, to me, with all of the paint, the sculpt, articulation, that had to be the next evolution of what Cliff Jumper was. If they would have released something that was way too close to, let's say, the X Transbots or the MMC, I would have said to myself, where's the growth? Where's the evolution? Then I wouldn't have waited, So get back to the Seekers. Like I said, when I got the Make toys, I had no idea of Deformation Space or Takara releasing their newer versions. So for me, again, I'm always looking for that improvement and everything like that. And to me, this is what makes it fun. It's barbershop talk, right? It's who's better, LeBron or Jordan, even though it's Jordan, in my opinion. Who's the best boxer of all time? Like,
sorry,
this
your audio went out. You mispronounced LeBron. What?
Oh, sorry. This is what makes the barbershop talk, right? Who is the best of in our case, is it X Transbots or Fans Toys? This is what makes it exciting, But to answer your question directly, I don't really do placeholders for the most part. If I know something's coming out.
Well, I guess a great one. I would probably say a great example to use. Do any of you guys have Masterpiece tracks in your display?
Yes, I have them right now.
Because guess what? That's a placeholder there, son.
That is a placeholder. Yeah. I'll get them right now.
But you don't need to. We'll see right through it. But that's a great example. That is a placeholder right now. Because Lord knows that can be improved upon. When that first came out, everyone was saying it should have been better.
Yeah. Yes. So our malnourished little friend.
So you have a placeholder in your collection.
I do have a placeholder for Masterpiece tracks. Yes.
Yes, and I'll say whenever I got back into it, I of course had to jump in with both feet, so I was grabbing a bunch of stuff at the same time, possibly with the intention of switching things out. But as I've gone further into everything now, and I've started to where I feel comfortable with saying I have my line of season 1, I have my line of season 2, even if one brand comes out with the newest version or something like that. If I am satisfied with what I have, I'm not running to get the new one now. In fact, I'm trying to streamline what I have and kind of get rid of some of those filters that we have going on. Example is Bad Cube's Gears. We know that there's one coming out this year. At some point, he will be swapped out. But at the time, I got him. He was it, because he was it for everyone. And I am curious to see if when the new one comes out, is it going to be a night and day, or is there some elements of that older version that are still going to, stick with you to where you might not need to swap it out, or you, as some people do, have both. I don't know. But picking which one's the best, that's completely subjective. I think we've all had the discussions where, I like this version versus this version, whether it's with your example you have up there between Virtus, Saltus, and Apache. That's a prime example. If you go with the guys that say, everything's got to be tune related, well, then that means, you like the X Transbots version. No, don't like that. Okay, well, you want something that poses. Okay, well, you want the MMC Saltus. Well, I don't know. Well, then do you want Apache, who doesn't look tune and isn't really the most posable figure, but it's that brand. So that's the one that's the best. So there's different ways that everyone can have this discussion. And sometimes, people are going to disagree with the results of that, and that's fine. That's why we all collect things together. But yeah, deciding which one's best, I don't know. With some figures, if we ever are going to have an answer to that, which one is going to be the best version of anything? Which prime is the best prime?
And that comes down to the next question. Where do you draw the line? When are we satisfied? What will satisfy us? And that's an introspective question. Again, I go to I mentioned Zero. He's got every blasted prime out there. At one point, I prided myself. I used to have, at one point in my collection, every version of Starscream ever made. Wow. I was very proud of that. I mean, I had the freaking Pretender. I had the G2. I had the Beast Wars Neo, even though it wasn't technically the same one. I had Waspinator thrown in there just because of that one time. Like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't think you're ever done. If you're a collector, granted that you're not mortgaging or refinancing your house or rent to buy figures. What I think one of the great things for all of us, whatever line we collect, is that at some point you kind of reach back in time to your 6 or 7 year old self in the 1980s. You're like, wow, I've sort of completed the circle, right? I've collected everything, or I wanted this as a kid, right? Or I saw this and now I have it. And yet we keep collecting and collecting. So I don't think that we're ever going to draw a line. I think it's more of a secular sort of thing. And, doing this as an adult is fantastic. We've all made really good friends with one another, gone to different shows. It's a great community. As far as the figures themselves, I guess for me right now, collecting Masterpiece, I'm going to be a completionist, I would say. Seasons 1, 2, 3, and I guess the 4, if you could say, any exclusive or Japanese series. But again, I'm always going to be looking for the best figure that's out there, right? Whatever is going to, speak to me. And I see a TM Reviews comments there as well too. He says never satisfied. I was teasing him the other day because he's into engineering, right? So if he sees something that's going to tickle his fancy and appeal to him as far as the transitioning or creative transformations, that might be something for him. But for me, I'm always going to be striving for what I consider is the best version of a figure, and that's sort of a blend between toy and tune. I know a lot of people say you can't toe the line, but to me, I look for that good combination.
Let me turn this question back to you then. And when it says, where do you draw the line? Are there things within the collecting that you do stop at? Examples, 2 examples right now. X-Transbots released renders a year plus in advance of all of these different characters and figures they're going to come out with. Not a one. People that have went into fans toys for the combiners. We've had DX9, we've had X-Transbots come out with the original G1 colors and repaints. No combiners. Where do you is that something that would draw the line for you to say, all right, you know what? I was going in on fans toys, but I don't want to wait. I can get this DX9 version and it satisfies the height. It satisfies the articulation that I want from him. He can stand up there right next to Superion and Bruticus and be okay. Does that ever fall into either one of your minds as you go through your collection?
The whole purpose is
not really. Yeah, I would say no. I think the only real negative reaction I ever remember seeing is our very good friend Pig for Life, getting upset with the price of the Menasor trailer, if I remember. But look, at the end of the day, I think that you're I think that might be, better to nothing that would stop me from collecting or not from getting a particular piece. I mean, I think that when finally those limb bots are released for the combiners, I'll probably absolutely go in on them. To your point about X-Trans bots, all those repaints of the various car bots and stuff like that, it has to excite me, right? I think, and I think the community as a whole will dictate that, right? So I think the repaint of the Hauler figure, right? What was that? Was it the Da Vinci, if I'm not mistaken, the green version of the Hauler? Like that got everyone excited. I didn't see a bad review of that figure, right? So it transformed well. It had an aesthetic look. It kind of had this, history buried in the Constructicons. So I think as long as the companies out there, whether it's listening to us or them initiating it, as long as they excite us, then we're in on it. If they release something that's going to be a dud or way too expensive or just Caravaggio, thank you, Alan, as if it's going to be something that's just they're not getting excited for, then they can't expect us to get excited for. So I think your question is definitely poignant in that respect, because the Caravaggio, excitement. Some of those repaints of the Cliff Jumper mold, maybe not as much. So I really think it lies in the companies and the authenticity. We know when a company is getting up and getting excited, and that's what drives us, I think.
Okay.
So that finally goes. So I guess that means, where do we go? Do we keep on amassing, or do we filter? Do we replace? I personally think it's the whole quantity versus quality. I think it's sometimes. I mean, there is a satisfaction of seeing 4 Starscreams on a shelf. Not gonna lie. Listen, you mentioned the evolution of a character. You have them on there. You're physically seeing that evolution of a figure as your display. But then, are you collecting the definition of the character? Or are you, what is your definitive collection, in a way?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we run it through a filter. Where do we go? And then where do we go from here? How do you see? Would you say that any of this, even giving you just are you confirming or even reevaluating the direction of your collection with this?
I think if you're not looking at your collection, playing with your collection, moving things around, then you're going to find yourself stuck and stagnant very quickly. So I think filtering out what you have and what is potentially available is a constant exercise for your collecting habits. And that also helps you keep your idea of what definitive means for you pretty sharp and on point, because you're using not only your own subjectivity, but as Niles was saying before, you're in an active community of fellow collectors that have a multitude of history, their own sensibilities over a figure, their listing of what makes character XYZ from brand ABC the best, and being able to have those constructive conversations help you figure out what's going on, because as we kind of bleed over from Transformers and into other action or collecting hobbies, like your NECAs, Mezcos, everything like that, the companies are always going to be trying to push something out, and they're not going to be they're not thinking of, well, the price might go up this way or anything like that. It's all about pushing product and getting people to buy. So when they send you renders of 5 different Venoms in 90 days,
great movie, 5 Venoms,
and you're not buying everything, then you're going to miss out on something. If the whole thing of fear of missing out, you got to pre-order everything or else it's going to be gone. We noted that within third party, everyone. When I first came into Transformers collecting, and it was it's 2021 going into 2022, you had to order a Fans Toys pre-order right then and there, or else you're never going to get it. Now we've seen that that inventory is still available now for certain figures. I'll say there are other ones that have sold out upon release. But that's kind of like the catches that you have as a collector that you gotta balance out.
Give me one second. I'm gonna throw 1.5 things. One, of course, for those watching, in the chat, we actually do have a delay. So if anyone has any questions to ask any of us, feel free to put that in the chat right now. And by the time we get everything catches up, we'll be able to go through that. So I want to throw that on there real quick. Two, you actually mentioned something about that, the 2019. Would you say, does FOMO influence the fear of missing out? Has that influenced this possibly could be the definitive version and I don't want to miss out on that? Or do you guys wait until a reviewer who you feel shares your opinion gets their hands on it?
I'll let Niles go first on that.
I think with becoming a smart collector, you become a little bit like Splinter, a little bit more wise, because there were times where I'd be at work, I'd have my work computer up, my phone up, and I'm refreshing a page to pre-order something, right? And there were times where if you did miss on a pre-order, like Michael said, that you would miss it. But I think learning what I really do like has definitely led me to be a little bit more patient and definitely wait for one of our reviewer friends to get it in hand and kind of, talk turkey before they release the video and then digest it, see reactions and stuff like that. So for me, that's, even if you don't buy the figure, that's still part of the collecting, right? Having a conversation about it, doing the reviews, and comparing everything. So I've definitely been more patient since I've been collecting for several years now.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there.
I mean, I know you don't subscribe to it, Niles, but like G.I. Joe, that's something we have to deal with right now. If you're a G.I. Joe collector, jump on that button. Actually, I'm going to throw this one to Dare real quick. Reviewers are cool, but you got to experience for yourself to make your own decision. That's still, I think it should still be your acid test. Just, hey, I like it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm going to give this a couple seconds in case we get any questions from the chat on here. If you guys want to throw anything else to the pool.
Oh, while we're waiting, the Dragonfly just hit 81,000 backers.
Oh,
or 8,164 backers.
Wow.
Once again, G.I. Joe team is laughing their tails off at the Marvel Legends team. And that Dragonfly has a top, a bottom, and a middle.
Mm-hmm.
It's exciting to be a G.I. Joe collector right now, that's for sure.
It actually, in a way, it very much is, between Joe, Action Force, and some of these, all these other third companies coming in. I'm very curious how that BBTS exclusive Monster Force one's going to be. Mariano, he doesn't let FOMO influence his choices. He makes his own, and awesome. TM removes, he lets the FOMO get him on his HasLabs. But all right, it looks like we don't have too many questions for the pool, from the audience pool. So first of all, Niles, I really got to thank you. This was a fantastic topic. I was kind of pining away things, and Mike came after me with this, and this was, I think, a fantastic discussion. Mike, thank you for relaying this on to me. You guys who have been watching for the show, thank you very much. For those of you watching on the replay, thank you very much. Please give us a like. Please, hit hit the figure action. I don't think I put any links below. I'm kind of an idiot on this one, but catch us every Thursday for the Figure Action Podcast. And you can catch really cool merch like this.
Yes.
You can definitely catch Mike. Where can they catch you?
Well, Thursday nights, definitely. And I'm hoping I'm not going to overstep with the rest of the Figure Action guys, but now's you have an open invite for Thursdays if you want to come in sometime. But other than that, it's my little tiny channel. I've been trying to get through a lot of different things that I picked up here in the past couple of weeks and things that I've been holding for too long that I'm trying to get through and get out. And getting ready to leave to go down to Augusta to see how the next step of my definitive collection path is going to go. I'm curious to see the results of Hasbro's announcements today with other companies in the same type of genre. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I'm on here. I finally broke down and did an Instagram for the channel, so trying to put together some of my pictures.
Instagram's more fun than Twitter. You'll find out it's a lot less toxic.
I've given up on Twitter was never. We won't even go there.
Just say it, yeah. Niles, anything you'd like to plug? I don't know if you've got any social network empire that we don't know about.
No. I would just shout out the folks at ERC Exclusive Repaints and Customs, and even if you don't have any custom Transformer pieces or custom, figures, definitely join. It's a very friendly group. We do giveaways periodically, and it's just a fun place to come. Everyone's very, very cool. You'll be able to catch me at BotCon. Like I said, I live in New York City, so that's probably the nearest con. We are skipping out on TFCon. We were planning something to go to Canada, but if you can't catch me at BotCon, you could just catch me on the flip side. Send me a friend request or whatever, and be happy to talk to anybody.
Yes. And we also know that. Oh, I was going to say, and when in doubt, ask Niles for some cookies. His daughter's quite the baker.
Okay, gotta be careful with these days. Cookies, you don't know what kind you're gonna get because my work does occasionally test randomly.
So,
and of course, you can catch me on my channel at True Star Screamer and every Thursday night at the Figure Action Podcast. Gentlemen, thank you very much. As I like to say, this podcast is made for the people over 30, so we can go to bed at a decent bedtime. For those of you, again, appreciate you coming for the figure reaction. If you guys have any topics you'd like me to discuss, put that in the comments below. Tell us on Figure Action. Heck, drop me a DM as well directly on Facebook. Most of you guys who are in ERC, I'm on there. I just put a big plug for this show on there. And you can catch me on various social medias. That's True Star Screamer. Thank you all very much. Hit that like button as always. And until next time, take care. Peace.
bye.